All right. Drew, I am so honored to be talking with you today about LA AIDS Jabber. I think that's probably I think for the 90s, that would have been the most distasteful name imaginable, but I think it's acceptable in today's society. So I think you did a great job on this film. I got to watch it a couple of days ago, and it's amazing. So thank you so much for making this film.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for the compliment. There is a interesting little footnote to all this. I originally released it under the name Jabber because I had some concerns about the political implications of the movie and it being so newsworthy at that point in time, and really kind of taking a risk to make something that I thought might very well be controversial. As it turns out, it seems to be in this day and age even more controversial because of the nature of it being shot on video and what I refer to it as the original OG pandemic, the one before the current COVID. So thank you for the compliment. Yeah, I appreciate that. It was an interesting process to make it, run and gun guerrilla type of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I hear that. And what I found interesting is that it's marketed as a horror film, but as I watched the movie, I felt more of it as a character study of someone who not only is dealing with the AIDS epidemic, but he obviously suffers from a mental health crisis because he's already from the minute we introduce him, he's already unhinged. Like something's not right with him. And so I felt like it was more of a thriller rather than a horror film. It's more of a thriller about someone who suffers from mental health.
Very, very observant of a young man. Yeah. What happened is I think it exacerbated this diagnosis that he received of what was already there under the surface. And that kind of came to light, maybe in my mind, after the effect, because he was such a good actor that he was able to embellish that part. And being a young guy, you know, at that time, he, I think, really, really touched some deep chords within him. And I stayed away from gay and lesbian themed things because I didn't want to, you know, put anybody down for their lifestyle, because as far as I'm concerned, people are entitled to do whatever they want, you know? And so I stayed away from that, knowing that, number one, there could be some possibility of it hyping the film a bit, but I didn't want to get involved in that. This was a situation where we have a young guy who was an unlikely candidate to pick up AIDS, and at that time was clearly a death sentence. So knowing that and being given that diagnosis, he says, okay, you know, this is it, you know, if I'm going to go out, let me take a few people with me. So it didn't start out to go into the horror genre. It started out more as kind of a thriller. And I don't know, did I tell you the story? I initially started shooting it on film, but the film camera broke down.
Oh.
So I was unable, I didn't have the funds to repair the film camera. It was being shot 16 in the hopes to blowing it up to 35 and maybe getting a small art film theatrical distribution deal. Yeah. Long story short, one reel of film into it, the camera broke. I had no dollars to fix it. The cameraman that I was using from USC decided he was going to leave because he needed that for his demo reel. But to my credit, I shot the movie in video and film. And what the video was being used for was instant playback. I didn't have the money to keep taking film shot after film take. So what I would do is I would shoot on video. If it looked good there, I know that the film camera simultaneously would get the same thing, and then we'd be able to move on to a different take or a different scene. So we were able to finish it all on video. So that's how that transpired.
That's amazing to hear that. Oh, wow. So you practically took one medium and used another one, but it worked just the same. And
yeah. Exactly. And at that time, you know, the only venues that were really open for distribution were either on HBO, if it was something that would warrant their looking at, or the home video market. So I was basically relegated to, you know, do a small release in the home video market, but that's okay, because the reward for me, young man, was to be able to put something out into the universe.
Yeah, that's amazing. I got it. And back then, I mean, the home video market was huge back in the 80s and 90s. So in a way, it was like it was the perfect outlet for it.
Yeah, it was. And then it was shelved for probably 30 plus years. And I heard from Rob at Wild Eye Releasing having interest in possibly putting it out in the marketplace again. And I was thinking to myself, well, who would have interest in seeing this thing? I mean, it's rough around the edges, you know,
Yeah.
it really is. You know, back then when I initially put it out on video, you had to order 1,800 video boxes.
Oh wow.
That was the biggest expense of all. It wasn't shooting the movie, it wasn't editing the movie, but it was actually putting it out and then making duplicate VHS tapes. So it was kind of an interesting learning process.
That's amazing. And just for the record, I think the name Jason Majik is like the coolest name for an actor.
Yeah.
Just, and especially the way it's spelled. It's like the perfect the coolest actor ever. And yeah. So what was it like with him? Because I've seen him in another movie.
He's amazing.
Yeah, because I saw him in a movie called A Dangerous Place, which was a PM martial arts film, and he kind of played an unhinged character there. He was like the unhinged member of the Scorpions karate team, and so I felt like he had a knack for playing this role. He had tremendous ability, that young man, and he also did some things on 90210 and some other shows as well. So he was pretty well established, and I don't know if what I put out there was the first thing that he did, but I know that it was something that he almost literally carried it. I mean, and being such a young guy, clearly, you know, what makes good actors, and coming from that background, the reason I got into making the film in the first place was my wife had died. I had a son that was 2. I needed to raise him, keep him with me. So I couldn't be traveling for the acting stuff. I was doing a lot of episodic television. Yeah. So I said to myself, how can I stay in this arena? Well, so I said, well, let me try writing a movie, directing it, casting it, which in LA you could do. Right.
There would be actors willing to work, you know, for nothing or you know, a meal or whatever, and do it. And, you know, thank God he came along, because he did a remarkable job, I think.
Yeah, I felt like he brought the perfect, not just the unhinged, but when he's really going to evil mode, you know, not only does he get unhinged, but there's times where he was laughing kind of evilly, like he knew what he was going to do. And I think that elevated the performance as well. Right.
And his character, I think in real life is somewhat of an introvert. So quite often, my own experience with actors that are very, very deep and draw from a deep well, have things that they can draw from. And in some cases, it just automatically comes to the surface. And then they're able to just project that out there. And basically, in my opinion, what acting is you feel the thought of an experience that you had and you lay a line on top of it. And then you look at the other actor and it'll come out and just work its way into the right thing. But he was marvelous. So.
And I did like the subplot with the Detective Rogers, because she suffers the most. I mean, here she is with one partner, and then she has another partner by the second half, but she's also struggling with the fact that she's trying to have a work-life balance between working as a cop and her family life. And that one scene where she's with her family, and she's saying, "I promise, you know, I'll do what I can, and you know, spend more time with you guys." I felt that was important as well, even though she has to take on this case, but it shows like a different side of what we're used to when it comes to these type of movies.
You know, sir, that young boy in there that played her son was my son.
That's their son. Yeah, I noticed that. That's gotta be his son. That's gotta be.
Yeah, well, you know, I used whom and whatever I could, and he was great. I mean, I think his mother had just passed a few months prior, and so he was just remarkable, and he bonded immediately with her because having his mother die prior to him really knowing her, all he had was a record. When he got older were photographs and maybe a little bit of video, but never actually having met her. So with Marcy being a female influence like that, he just bonded. And, you know, I was amazed that he could remember the lines that he did.
Yeah, he did a good job.
He did a good job for a little boy, yeah. But no, and there's also something very interesting. Were you going to touch on the fact of why the detectives changed in the middle of the movie?
I kind of wondered that. Well, I figured for the first one, I know he was doing that job with the one guy's wife's ex-husband. Like I theorized something must have happened to him. He must have gotten in trouble for that. Therefore, the other detective comes in. That's what I was theorizing.
Absolutely. Well, if you want, I'll tell you the story behind that. The actor was a marvelous actor. His name, I believe, was Tony Donangelo. That played the first detective, and there was a real chemistry between Marcy Lynn, the detective, and you know, Rogers and he. But unfortunately, his schedule was such that it was somewhat erratic, and he was unable to make the things. And so it got to the point where his other things that he was doing, it just overshadowed. And, I was in kind of one of these run and gun situations where I had to get all these people together, mostly on weekends, and we would run and gun and shoot it. We literally had weapons on the street. We were running down the street with weapons. You know what I mean? My God, if we'd been stopped, that would have been major problems. So it got to the point where I just had to, say, look, I'm sorry, we have to bring in somebody else because I can't keep changing up schedule. End result was we got the other gentleman in there, and he just did a marvelous job. It's a pickup, and we used a story, that something happened to him, and it's not a seamless transition, but enough of one where it was able, where it worked, where the captain
you can kind of work your senses.
I had no choice. Yeah, I mean, what am I going to do?
You must have to work the senses. All right,
yeah, right.
Must have happened. He must have gotten something, and boom, there he is. Another
sure. Right.
What I also liked was, like I said, it was marketed as a horror film. It wasn't that bloody at all. I mean, the most blood was everything splashed on or him filling the syringes. And I think that's something you don't expect in a shot on video film. Usually we see shot on video films back then, it's all super gory because they're just working with whatever. But here it's totally subtle. It was like barely anything. I think that's what helped. That's another reason why, like, when you see the title, you're just like, what? And then you see the trailer and you're like, okay, that's not what and then once you see the movie, it's like, this is not what I imagined it is. But I think it's even better seeing the full film.
Yeah, I originally released it under the name Jabber. I was concerned about the word AIDS in there. Right. So I released it on video under the name Jabber. And then, much to Rob's credit, Wild Eye, he suggested that, we go with the LA AIDS Jabber because, it's got more significance at this point in time. So that, I think, was a wonderful suggestion because there was a possibility of releasing it under that first name. But I think that being the fact that it was put together the way that it was in such a quick fashion, because I had no permits. This was a run and gun, and you could do that back then, and you could still do it, but not necessarily in LA anymore.
No, it's more. I think it's more of an East Coast thing now. It's like I had a friend. He does those type of films. He does action flicks, and that's what he does. He does those He does the run and gun type, and so I think it's becoming more of an East Coast. I've seen it more in the East Coast nowadays than.
Well, this particular movie, what I wanted to do is I wanted to call attention to the fact that anybody could get AIDS. Wouldn't have to be somebody that was gay or a certain sexual persuasion. Anybody could get it. And by using the theme of a young man getting a blood transfusion and getting it, what I was trying to do was bring to people's consciousness and to grow the idea that, look, don't point fingers at people because they have a certain lifestyle, that's not responsible for the disease. The disease, like COVID, is something which we all can pick up. So it just, and that was the thing. And if it had been shot on film and I'd had some kind of a budget to work with, I probably would have done a film that was maybe a little softer around the edges, meaning a little more professional. But because of the constraints that I had, I tried to do the best with what I could do. And I didn't want to show a lot of blood and a lot of gore because I thought that would take away from the primary story. But it is, it is what it is, as a friend says. It is what it is, but it is a timestamp from the 1990s and of LA at that particular time, and the funny hairstyles and the padded shoulders and everything. And, it's there for enjoyment. It's like, wow, that what LA looked like during that time, and, and whatever.
Yep. So. Yeah. And like I said, I think you did a great job with this film. I think in a way, I think despite the title, it's an important film to see because, like I said, not only does it dealt with something that happened in the 90s with the AIDS epidemic, but like I said, it's about mental health because this guy was already unhinged. So this just amplified that. And I think, and maybe if people see this, they'll, if they know someone who's going through something like this, not just AIDS, but even just mental health, they'll be able to get the help for it that they're going to need. And this will be a good example of what could happen.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. What's so interesting is that in retrospect, when I look at it now, these different things that you're bringing up, and much to your credit, I can see where all these other thought-provoking things maybe come in after the fact, because all these are all elements that people could think about. Well, the fact that he had an unhinged personality, prior. And I wasn't thinking, to be candid with you, I wasn't thinking about that prior to, I was thinking that the only thing that might have precipitated that was the fact that, he got this diagnosis. I mean, there are a couple of faux pas in there. One is, I don't know if you remember the skeleton, the chiropractor skeleton.
Yeah.
In the doctor's office, that kind of spinal, the white thing.
Yeah.
Well, it was a chiropractor's office, and I wasn't smart enough to realize that that was a chiropractor's spine, and this is supposed to be a medical doctor, So anyway, little things like that are kind of laughable. But it started out, I wanted it to be a thought-provoking film, but it is thought-provoking anyway. I mean, call it what it is. It's no Academy Award winner, but that's okay. It is what it is, and it shines a light on a few things, So
yeah, it's entertaining too. So I think people, really
it
enjoy it. So
yeah, I hear across the whole spectrum. Yeah.
Yes, and you've had your share of doing the horror stuff too. Blood Diner, for one. I do remember you in that movie. You were like the Fuad Ramses of that movie, like convincing your nephews to do what they did.
I'll tell you a very interesting story how that came to be, if you're curious.
Yeah, definitely.
I hooked up with a guy called Fred Olen Ray.
Oh, I know.
Number of movies.
I know that name. I know that name very well.
Yeah, somebody told me the other day, I guess he's doing Hallmark movies or something now.
Yeah, I know.
Out of Florida.
What a change.
Isn't that interesting? What a switch up. Yeah, right? But I met him on a casting call. He had an office in the Wells Fargo building at Hollywood, or Sunset and Vine, rather. And I was looking through Drama Log, which at that time was a periodical for non-union stuff. And I had not joined the union as of that point. I was looking for something to do. So I went up, and he cast me for Evil Spawn, which was a low budget thing that he shot up in some producer's, Frank Brzez's house up in Hollywood Hills. And so I did that, and I think I made all of like $50 a day for my work. And then he referred me, I believe, to Jackie Kong, the director of Blood Diner. So I went and I met her, and then another nice gentleman by the name of Jimmy Mazelon, and I got along very well with both of them. People have said to me, well, Jackie can be difficult. And you know what? I never had a problem with Jackie, because, she's a professional. She knows exactly what she wants. And, if you're a good actor, you listen to the director. Director wants something. In her case, she said to me, go with it. Whatever you feel you can do, So I thought, well, okay, let me give it a shot. She warned me. She said, we have one door. It's a balsa wood door. We have a limited budget. If you screw up with breaking that open with an axe, that's it. History, right? We don't have money for another door. I hit the door, I went through, fell to my knees, sung to my nephews, and then it all seemed to work. But much to her credit, she said to me, look, I think you could pull this off. What do you think you can do? And I said, this is what I'll do. She says, fine, go for it. And it came off nice. So I was led to her by Fred Olen Ray, I think, who referred me. And then I was in something else that she did. I just had a couple of lines. I don't know if they cut it or not, called The Underachievers. Mm-hmm. Another one of her movies. So that was my initiation into that business, was doing horror movies, like so many people. And it's interesting. And in Deep Space, I think for another Fred Olen Ray, he gave me a part. I think I made union wages $600 for one line that I said to Charles Napier, in the movie, but that's okay. I mean, it was like, so I didn't act for that long, but then I did other things like America's Most Wanted. Had a great part in that. We did it at Folsom Prison and stuff. So acting was fun. But the horror thing, I had no idea, young man, that there's such an interest in this kind of stuff. And whether Jabber or LAH Jabbers goes into that genre or not, there are elements of that in it.
Yeah, and people are getting, like, there are a lot of filmmakers, there are some filmmakers today who are really getting like inspired by the 80s and 90s shot on video film. One I can mention now is Todd Sheets. He's one of who I recently talked to. He did a movie called Final Caller that just came out, and he is heavily inspired by the 80s and 90s things. His is like really graphically gory, and he grew up with the 80s in the 80s also. And he's actually releasing, he actually told me he actually has, like Jabber, he has them on VHS. He has copies of the movie. Just, but
hard to find now.
Yeah,
very, very hard to find now. Yeah, there was a time when video stores went out of business, and they had a lot of them for sale on Amazon. That you could pick up for a song, and they usually at the bottom had a sticker from the video store in Missouri or wherever they were. But those
I got some of those. I still got some of those.
I got to say, I still have a master copy of that on VHS. But yeah, that's going back almost 30 years for that. But yeah, no, have you heard of Mark Polonia?
Yes, I have. I've heard of his stuff.
Nice guy. And he came up to interview me here for the back end of the movie, and he does tremendous numbers of films. I mean, incredibly talented, and he's firmly entrenched in that horror genre, and he knocks them out one after the other, and then releases them, I guess, through Wild Eye and other places. So
that's what. Yeah, Final Caller, I think, is a Wild Eye title also. That Todd Sheets is it's a Wild Eye title, and he was telling me like he works with the same people. And they're, he goes, I treat them like family. I let them do what they, I give them ideas. They do what they want to do, and yeah, he just has a blast.
What is your history? What is your history? Have you been involved in writing, or you're just
I'm a film studies. I was a film studies major, so I graduated with a film studies degree, and I started out with small websites. I used to do my other big genre was martial arts films. So. I grew up with the classics, and I used to go to the video stores, always running those type of movies. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote for them. I wrote with martial arts stuff for almost a decade. And the last 7 years I've been doing World Film Geek, and I decided I'm going to tackle everything now. I want to just immerse myself into all types of genres. And my two favorites are horror and martial arts to this day. Those are my two favorite genres.
I got a funny story for you. When I was in LA and I was married, I used to take my wife when we were dating to these old movie theaters called the Grand and things that were down in downtown LA, when that used to be an area where people would congregate, and old movie houses, and they would show 5 or 6 of these martial arts movies with Bruce Lee and, other people that were imposters, one right after the other. And I think it was like $1 to get in, and you'd sit there and you'd eat you'd have to step on people's popcorn, but whatever. But it was cool because they would just run them, and everything was, it was just wonderful. And I love those kind of movies. Those are fun,
Yeah.
Because sometimes the lips would move.
But the words don't match.
Right.
I used to, that's what I used to love about those. And then I'm from New York originally. I'm in Florida now, but I'm originally from New York. So there used to be a place in New York. Where in New York? I was in Westchester, so I was right near the city.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So New York City.
I lived for a while back in the mid 2000s in a place called Pawling. Do you know where that is?
Pawling.
It's near Patterson. Near Patterson.
Okay.
Okay. It's near White Plains area.
Oh yeah. See, I was near White Plains. Yeah, I was right by White Plains. I was in Dobbs Ferry. That's where I'm from.
Oh yeah, sure, cool. So we would have been neighbors, maybe. Huh?
That's my hometown.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I remember in New York City, in Chinatown, they had a place called the Music Palace, and they used to play like the Hong Kong movies down there until they shut.
Yeah.
So
I used to take the 8 train. My apartment the 8 train would stop right across from where I live, and I would take that in, and I guess that went through Harlem to get into Grand Central.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
So. And it was about 60 miles north of New York City. But yeah, no, that's great. So you've been a fan all these years of those type of films, huh?
Oh yeah, cool. Yeah. My dad got me hooked on them, and my parents both got me hooked on them. They would rent the horror movies, and because we used to go to this one video store in East Tremont Avenue in the Bronx, and because my dad used to work there on Saturdays at a furniture store, and right across was this video store. So every day when we're picking up from work, we always go to the video store. They would rent like a horror or action flick, and they're always renting me like a kung fu movie. And then, but now I'm getting them into the newer films. So it's like now it's like the opposite. Now I'm telling them, oh, you should check this movie out. You should check this out. But back then it was them telling me, you should check this. Here you go. Watch this. Watch this. So now,
can I ask you a question? Why this big resurgence in the shot on video stuff? Is it because it's kind of raw around the edges? Is that the reason, or is it a time capsule of what was going on, or what do you think?
I think people are getting into nostalgia these days, if you really think about it. I mean,
Okay.
think in the 80s, people were getting kind of into, Dirty Dancing and some other flicks. Everyone was getting into the 60s. The 90s, you had Dazed Confused, so you had like the 70s. But I think over the course of the last like maybe 15 years, everyone's getting into more 80s, like the more nostalgic 80s, and even past, even before that now. So I think our generation's getting more into nostalgia a lot more these days, which could be why everyone's getting into the shot on video stuff. Because I know that's for me. That's what it is for me. It's nostalgia. It's what like.
May I ask you, how old are you? Are you my son's age? He's 36. What would you be? You're younger.
I'm older.
Are you really? You don't look it.
I know. I'm 43.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Man. Whoa. That's good. You must have some good genes in your family there, huh?
I do.
Very cool.
Both my parents are going to be 75, and they look like they're in their 50s.
Cool. How about that? Huh? Well, I guess you have something to look forward to. A lot more young years. Yeah. But it's amazing. You're just about that cutoff generation that really remembers the Blockbusters and all those people out there, right? And Blockbuster basically put themselves out of business by being so greedy.
Exactly.
That's they would go in and they would try to buy out small mom and pop video stores, and the mom and pop video stores would say, no, we like doing what we're doing. We're in a small community. People know us. Blockbuster would say, well, we'll pay you just to get out. And they would say, no. So what Blockbuster would do is they would look for the closest location, build themselves a big store there, and drive these people out of business. I mean, how terrible is that?
I know. I went to the store in my hometown. I used to go to a place called Cedar Street Video all the time. Like every other day after work, after school, I'd go there to rent a movie. And then Blockbuster was on the next town over, which is Ardsley. And I think I only went to Blockbuster maybe once or twice out of all that, but I always went to my mom and pop store because they knew me by like the third week, they knew me by name because I was always going in there. That's the point.
Are there any video stores left?
Oh, man.
Anywhere? There must be one or two in the country, I would think, because at one time they had 50,000 or something,
Yeah, I know there's a Blockbuster in Bend, Oregon. That's the last one. That's one still.
But open. I just mean video stores, period. Is there enough of a market where they might start getting VHS tapes again, and then people would come in and rent those?
I'm not sure.
Okay, I don't know either.
I know there was a few. I think there was a few, and I know there was a few in New York City because I remember seeing a documentary at the Florida Film Festival about the video store market.
Okay.
Now some are still open, and I think there was one in North Carolina that was that's a movie theater, but then they attached a video store next to it.
How about that? Yeah. Wow, that's cool. Very, very cool. Yeah. No, I think that now you've seen the most recent Blu-ray release, right? Is that what Wild Eye forwarded on to you?
Yeah, I saw a screening link. Yes, I did see a screener.
And you had an opportunity to look at some of the back end stuff as well, right? Some of the then and now stuff.
No, not quite.
Oh, okay. So you just basically saw the screener of the film itself.
Yeah, just the movie.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I do plan to get that Blu-ray though. After seeing what's on it, I'm like, I need to get this, especially after seeing the movie. I was like, I'm definitely gonna get that.
Very, very cool.
So, what's next for you? What are you currently working on? Anything film-wise?
I am currently working on a project, and I'm writing it. It could be a potential continuation of this title that we're doing now. I'm not sure yet. I've got a couple of scripts going, and if it would be related to that, but in a kind of like an offshoot. 30 years after the fact, it kind of might be interesting, to see what the characters are doing in this particular, time frame, the ones that are still alive. And then I have another one that's kind of a little more of the horror, genre, there'd be some blood and, some interesting characters. Because I like, my stuff's kind of character driven. I like interesting characters. Yeah. Because, you always try to, you try to decipher, well, what's going on with that guy? What's leading him to the kind of behavior he was? Like your great observation about this guy had some stuff under the surface already because he was able to bring that. That's a very great observation. A lot of people don't see that. But, if this guy had been, a stable type of a personality, Jason Majik, you know, and the character he portrayed, Jeff Roberts, he might have just disappeared from the face of the earth, maybe committed suicide, maybe gone on one long bender of drinking and drugs and just said goodbye world, you know. But no, he decided, look, if I'm going to go out, I'm going to take a few people I don't like with me. So to even have the concept of a list and then going and doing that is, you know, pretty provocative. And you know what else is interesting? I understand that after that movie was made, there were a couple of incidences where people, I think one was in New York City, a guy was walking around with a needle, sticking people with a needle.
Oh, wow.
And he had AIDS. Yeah, and there was a big article in the paper about it.
Oh, yeah,
so these are all
that.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I do remember that, because I remember I was a teenager, and I think I remember reading about that.
Isn't that interesting, huh?
It is. Yeah, it totally is.
Yeah.
Well, people, LA AIDS Jabber is coming August 9th on Special Edition Blu-ray from Visual Vengeance and Wild Eye.
Right.
This
Correct.
is a great film, to be honest with you guys. This is a great thriller. It has a character study also, a wonderful cast, and for what it's worth, I mean, it's a run and gun movie, but still, it was an amazing run and gun movie. Drew, I can't thank you enough. It's been a pleasure talking to you about this movie.
And likewise, young man, it's been a pleasure as well. And you know, it really lights up my life to know that there are people out there that are interested in seeing this. And all I can do is just say thank you to everybody that's promoting it, including yourself and Rob at Wild Eye, and of course the all the other people that, you know, were involved in the back end, and the actors and so forth and so on, because it just kind of makes my retirement years a little bit sweeter, you know?
Yep, I hear that. Well, everyone, this is it for now, and we'll see you soon. Thank you again, Drew, so much.
Thank you, and stay in touch.
I will.
Bye-bye now.
Take care.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now.